Engage.
Hey folks, here to talk about the return of Patrick Stewart to the Star Trek franchise, enjoying my first cup of Earl Grey tea, hot, from the new Nerdmastay mug, available on TeePublic. And Jean-Luc Picard is actually the reason I started drinking Earl Grey in the first place. It is literally Earl Grey. It is not an empty cup. It is not... Can't really tip this over to show you. Oh, you can sort of see that. Nice hot Earl Grey tea. And I used to watch The Next Generation when I was growing up in the 80s and in the 90s. I didn't really get into it, though, until the Blu-ray set came out. The new remastered set. And it looks pristine. It sounds amazing. But it's not just about the visual quality. The reason I really love it when old shows get remastered into high definition is when you've got actors who are all about nuance. So Bill Bixby in The Incredible Hulk is such a subtle, nuanced actor that you can't tell a lot of what he's doing in the old DVDs. But in the new Blu-ray set, you really see the subtlety and the precision in his acting. It's really something to behold. Another actor, very much like Bill Bixby, is Sir Patrick Stewart. Incredible actor. We all knew he was great in the old Star Trek Next Generation show, but it was really the Blu-rays that made me appreciate what he was doing. Even though he was a stage actor before getting into Star Trek, so you would think that his movements, his acting would be over the top so that the people in the back row could see and hear what he was doing. He acted with such precision, such subtlety. And again, the DVDs, the TV broadcasts of The Next Generation didn't really pick up his nuances, and all the other actors on the show too, but especially Sir Patrick Stewart. Really amazing performance, and I just fell in love with The Next Generation and Captain Jean-Luc Picard even more after finishing that Blu-ray set. So I was excited to hear about the return of Sir Patrick to the Star Trek franchise, that he's coming back to play Jean-Luc Picard. And I thought it would be fun to share my top 5 ideas for what Jean-Luc is going to do when he returns to the Star Trek galaxy. So we're all very excited for him to come back, but he did mention during the announcement there's no story. There's really no concept. The only idea is that they wanted to get back to basics. They wanted to return to what made The Next Generation so great. So fingers crossed that they're actually going to stick with that concept, because so often when you're working on something that has a lot of anticipation, there is pressure to go bigger and better and badder and stray from what got you to the dance. And that's exactly what they did with the Picard movies. TNG had a certain tone, a certain level of intelligence and maturity, a certain type of story. It was rarely action stories. It was character-driven, emotion-driven. And when they got into the movies, they needed more explosions. They needed more giant battles. And it was a shame to see TNG deviate so much from what brought it to the dance. So these 5 ideas I have for new Picard shows, some of them are serious, some of them are silly, but I'm hoping that they return to form with what they did in The Next Generation instead of doing something big and exciting, because much like what happened with the new Star Wars trilogy, all the people they're bringing back are up there in age, and they can't really physically do as much believably as they could when they were younger. I mean, in this day and age, any actor, any age can do anything, thanks to CGI, stuntmen, editing. But that doesn't change the fact that an audience member's suspension of disbelief doesn't vanish. So even though you're making a 70 or 80 or 90-year-old actor do all of these crazy things, amazing physical things, the audience might be sitting there going, come on. And they'll believe it if it's a 30-year-old. they won't believe it if it's an 80-year-old. So most of these ideas are small, quiet, introspective, character-driven ideas. For those who love the big action JJ Star Trek movies, or all of the intensity and the action in Discovery, these ideas are not for you. These ideas are for the fans of the Star Trek Next Generation show and what that show was mostly like. Idea number one is what I like to call Quantum Luke. So after the announcement, I popped in my Blu-ray set to watch All Good Things again, the final episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. And as Jean-Luc is jumping through the timeline to his younger self and then his much younger self, from the beginning of the show, season 1, to present day, whatever season 7 was, and then to his elderly self with his vineyard, I got to thinking this is so much like Quantum Leap, and I thought it'd be interesting if something happened to Jean-Luc at his current age where he kept jumping into his previous self. There's a number of different things in Star Trek that can make this possible. Maybe even Q give Picard something to do because he sees how bored he is and what an amazing life he's led. It's kind of like Bilbo Baggins after having such an amazing adventure. It's kind of sad to just sit there and not have anything to do. So I'd love to see Picard traveling through time to his different stages of life. And it would be very much like Quantum Leap. We wouldn't go so far as to have him wake up as a teenager, look in the mirror, see a full head of hair and pimples and go, oh boy. So it wouldn't be that aggressive a Quantum Leap homage, but I think it would be really interesting if it was Sir Patrick Stewart being a new cadet, and everybody else would see him as the young Picard, but we, the audience, see him as the current aged Sir Patrick Stewart. And he just basically, the stories could either be reliving his youth or maybe trying to fix little things from his youth that have been nagging him. These are not Save the Galaxy stories. These are small little character stories that might not seem all that exciting in an age of more, bigger, more excess. I connected with The Next Generation because of the characters, because of the stories, the acting, not because of the phasers or the explosions or the villains or anything like that. I'm looking for emotional connection, emotional nourishment, spiritual connection and nourishment. And Sir Patrick Stewart has shown that he can do that. He has the acting ability to connect with you, the audience. I don't want to see him shooting people, blowing people up, riding in a dune buggy. I want to see him in situations that give him an opportunity to give more amazing performances. And I just picture him seeing his Jean-Luc Picard's father again, or mother again, family members, people from the past, being on the Stargazer. Can you imagine? I'm getting goosebumps just thinking of walking onto the bridge of the Stargazer. Sir Patrick Stewart at his current age, but he's wearing the uniform that young Jean-Luc wore when he served on that ship, doing a mission on that ship. It makes me excited, and it makes me feel like this would be in keeping with TNG. Idea number 2 goes back to that final episode of TNG, All Good Things, when we see old Jean-Luc with his beard, and he's just kind of shuffling around, and his old friend Geordi drops by for a visit, Geordi LaForge, and they get into their adventure, the crisis of the episode. But I really liked seeing these two old favorite characters reconnecting, chatting a little bit. And again, like I said, my list isn't about excitement. It's about sometimes just peace, tranquility. a very easygoing, peaceful vibe. And I would love to see Jean-Luc enjoying his retirement in his vineyard and being paid visits by his old friends. So this would be the guest star show. So it would be Patrick Stewart every episode, but Admiral Riker would drop by, and Captain Data, or whatever Data, Admiral Data or President Data, would drop by. All of these characters from his past would be dropping by, and it wouldn't have to be some sort of crisis every episode. It would be discussion. It would be an opportunity for some great actors to have one more chance to do wonderful scenes together. It all hinges on the writing. This has nothing to do with special effects. It would be shot out in a vineyard somewhere in a beautiful, maybe French countryside or something like that. So kind of the antithesis of a Star Trek sci-fi show, but I remember the scenes with Picard and Kirk in Generations. Not my favorite Star Trek movie, but I enjoyed their interplay. That type of thing, just like old Picard and old Geordi. I'd love to see more of that. Idea number 3 is very similar to the episode called Relics from TNG with Scotty. That's the one where Scotty goes into the holodeck and he recreates the bridge of the original Star Trek Enterprise, the Kirk ship. Great scene. One of my favorites from TNG. And again, just a nice scene for an old legend to be reminiscing, taking a moment, because often when we're in the moment, we're not enjoying the moment. And it's not until years later that we look back and we realize how special that moment that we were totally oblivious to was. That was a beautiful moment with Scotty, just looking back and not being all stressed out. I'm giving it all she's got. Just enjoying it for what it was. And I think it would be cool for Jean-Luc Picard to just have a holodeck somewhere, wherever he lives, and to recreate the ship, the entire Next Generation ship. And the purpose of the show is that he's come to the realization that he's been far too busy his entire life. Too busy worrying about this invasion and this anomaly and this Q getting into trouble. And he never had the time for the little people. And so he has recreated the Enterprise, or someone else has done it for him. And they say, hey, you should check this out. Maybe a cameo by Reginald Barclay. And so he just walks through the Enterprise. And again, he looks like Patrick Stewart looks today. No CGI, no de-aging, anything like that. He's in his old uniform and he's walking around. Everybody else, though, sees him as Picard look during the Next Generation show. And so he would do things like go into the lower levels and chat with some ensigns, some lower level people, and they'd be all worried and concerned. Oh, the captain! Why is the captain down here? Are we in trouble? And he would reassure them, no, relax. I'm just trying to get to know my crew a little bit better. And you could intercut footage from Star Trek The Next Generation from those remastered Blu-rays. So you could have old footage. You wouldn't have to bring O'Brien back, because a lot of the cast is noticeably aged. So if they're joining him in the holodeck, then that's cool. They can come with him and they look like they do today, like an old Jonathan Frakes joining Picard in the holodeck and both reminiscing in the ship. But for the most part, you could reuse old footage from TNG and have O'Brien yelling at his crewmen, hey, shut up over there, hurry up. And Picard would reassure him, don't worry about O'Brien, he's always cranky. But again, that's another story-driven idea, another character-driven idea where just learning the stories behind all the people that run the ship, instead of just nameless ensigns that get killed at the first sign of danger. The ship already has so much heart and soul in it, but how about just a little bit more, finding out who are all these little background characters, and instead of just doing a spin-off show where the show focuses on these unknown characters that no one really cares about, if you bring in Picard and he talks to them, how's that for a brush with greatness, rubbing elbows with the greats? Idea 4 is Ambassador Picard, which was mentioned in All Good Things, that he had served as ambassador for some time. And for that show, He's basically doing what Spock did in his TNG episodes that he appeared in. He's going all around the galaxy. He's cleaning up everybody's mess. So potential for a little bit more drama, a little bit more action there, possibly some battles. But for the most part, it would be Captain Jean-Luc Picard, Ambassador Jean-Luc Picard at that point, acting as a mediator between two warring sides. And good Lord, do we ever need that today. There are lots of people who can't see eye to eye with people they oppose. It's perfectly fine to disagree with somebody. What is absolutely unacceptable is disagreeing with them in a violent, angry, disrespectful way. It is possible to say, hey, agree to disagree. I respect your opinion even though I don't agree with it. We're losing that. And the whole reason Gene Roddenberry came up with Star Trek in the first place, he came up with it during a really tough time in the world. There was a lot of fighting. There was a lot of disharmony. And Roddenberry's view was optimistic. We'll get over this. We'll see eye to eye. We'll respect each other even if we don't agree. That was his whole concept. And I think it would be wonderful to have Jean-Luc Picard traveling across the galaxy, once again using the show as a metaphor for today's world. And the Orville did a fantastic job with that in their first season. And I think it's time that Star Trek got back to what brought it to the dance, and have Jean-Luc trying to make peace between sides. Not necessarily helping one side beat another side, but instead teaching empathy and saying, regardless of your opinion, what you're doing, the way you're treating this other side is wrong. There's a lot of that, like I said, going on in the world. You might not necessarily agree with what certain authority figures are doing. Just have some grace about it. Getting angry is not an accomplishment, and there are too many people in the world today who think anger is an accomplishment, that they actually did something with their life because they pounded a desk and they screamed and they swore and they got angry. Jean-Luc Picard has always been a symbol of grace and patience, except for the few times where when he flew off the handle, you will never forget it. Like, the line must be drawn here no further. When you get upset, when you bang a table or a trophy cabinet, it better be for something that really matters, and it better be one of the few times you do it in your life. Otherwise, it's just drama. It's just melodrama. So Picard, Ambassador, helping people see eye to eye, bringing peace in a very angry, bloodthirsty galaxy, I think would do wonders for a very angry world at this time. And idea number 5 actually comes from my wife. She is a huge Star Trek fan as well. She actually really got me into Star Trek. Like I said, I watched a little bit of TNG growing up, but when I met her, she was a huge, still is, a Voyager fan, and we watched all of Voyager together, and then all of TNG together. We're working through Deep Space Nine together, so it's really her passion for Star Trek that has made me passionate about Star Trek. In my toy videos, I'm often talking about how it's important to have empathy. If you're in a relationship, have empathy for what your partner is passionate about. And there are far too many people who are into geeky and nerdy things such as toy collecting, and their partner tolerates it. Ugh! They put up with it, and that's not cool. That cannot stand, man. That cannot stand. As the dude once said, you have to have empathy for your partner. So again, even if you're not into it, there has to be some joy. They're so happy, and I'm so happy for them. I was very happy for my wife that she loved Star Trek so much. And I was so happy for her that I joined in watching Voyager with her and TNG as well. So her hope for the new Jean-Luc show is something with a little bit more action than what I've mentioned. Borg invasion. And it would involve, it's a 3-season arc. First season is to hook the action fans, the people who, I guess, they're too conditioned to what Star Trek has become, all of this action. And I really like her idea behind this. So the first season is the Borg invasion, bigger and better and badder than we've ever seen it before. They come in, they're assimilating everybody, telling everybody resistance is futile. The second season is where they are defeated. And then the third season is the aftermath, where they're rehabilitated. So that, again, is going very subtly towards the original Gene Roddenberry concept, where it's not just about crushing your opponents, it's about redeeming them. And redemption is a theme that, again, is far too rare in everything today, especially TV and movies. Far too many things focus on crushing the enemy, obliterating them, owning them, destroying them. You see this word everywhere. So-and-so destroyed so-and-so. I like the idea of redemption. It's one of the reasons why I love the Star Wars original trilogy so much. And anytime anyone ever tried to disparage the original trilogy, at least to me, I would always say, what is your problem with a story of a son redeeming his father? And once I would do that, the person would realize often they didn't really think about what Star Wars was. They thought about the superficial things about Star Wars, lightsabers and space battles. But to me, Star Wars is a son redeeming his father, and it's a beautiful story. And I really like that idea. I don't like the initial idea of Borg invasion, because that just sounds like... I like some of the JJ movies, but Discovery wasn't my cup of tea at all. I need substance for Star Trek, just like I need substance for Star Wars. So a Borg invasion on its own and destroying them and rah-rah, we beat them, it doesn't do anything for me. But I love the idea of what to do with them after you've beaten them. That whole idea of what happened with 7 of 9 from Star Trek Voyager, rehabilitating this Borg, reassimilating her into humanity. It's not an easy road, and I think 7 of 9 was an amazing character in Voyager, and you could do that so many more times with so many more great new actors, and maybe even have a couple of old favorites assimilated, and we have to watch their journey back to humanity as well. So that's my top 5 ideas for the new Jean-Luc Picard Star Trek show. If you've got any ideas yourself, scroll down and go to town. If you'd like to have your own Nerdmas Stay mug, there's 2 different designs. There is the one inspired by the greatest toy store there was, and there's also this one as well with the exploding background. Plus a bunch of other cool items there, like pillows and phone cases, all sorts of t-shirts, hoodies, all sorts of different sizes, shapes, styles, colors, male, female, children's, lots of cool stuff on TeePublic. And a reminder that you can join the Patreon tribe as well. For as little as $1 a month, you can view Patreon exclusive videos, which are added every Friday. And this week's video is a closer look at that amazing Diamond Select Star Trek The Next Generation Enterprise D, that beautiful ship that Picard rode around in for 7 years during Star Trek The Next Generation. And if you're so inclined, there's a bunch of other tiers, which include more rewards, such as joining in on Patreon roundtable discussions, or making your own request for a review of something in the 80s Toy Museum, any figure, vehicle, playset, or really any other topic either. Discussion topic, top 5 list, whatever you want. Thanks for watching. Feel free to share the video, and to join the tribe, hit subscribe. Live long and prosper.